Welcome back, everybody. Doing a little bit of mixing and matching today. I have gotten requested from a handful of different people to look at Sabaton's 1916 cover, and I decided since I've never heard the song before that I'm going to do both the original from Motorhead and then Sabaton's after. So this will be the first one, then I'll pull up Sabaton's and do that one next. Um, yeah, I'm super excited about it. Rarely do I get videos that, like, right when they come out, I have a bunch of people recommending them. That's what happened with this one, so I'm excited about it. Let's jump into it.
16 years old when I went to the war to fight for a land fit for heroes. God on my side and a gun in my hand, chasing my days down to zero. And I marched and I fought and I bled and I died, and I never did get any older. But I knew at the time that a year in the line was a long enough life for a soldier.
Real quick, this was absolutely not what I was expecting. I don't know, going into it with thinking of Sabaton, this just wasn't what I was expecting. I like the sound of it. You all know, obviously, I super like history music. I like the, what is it, the snare drum in the background doing like the taps. I feel like it makes it sound like military related. Um, so yeah, I like it. Not what I was expecting, but I like it.
We all volunteered and we wrote down our names, and we added 2 years to our ages. Eager for life and ahead of the game, ready for history's pages. And we
Jeez.
brawled and we fought and we hoard till we stood 10,000 shoulder to shoulder. A thirst for the Hun, we were food for the gun, and that's what you are when you're soldiers. I heard my friend cry, and he sank to his knees, coughing blood as he screamed for his mother. And I fell by his side, and that's how we died, clinging like kids to each other. And I lay in the mud and the guts and the blood, and I wept as his body grew colder. And I called for my mother, and she never came, though it wasn't my fault, and I wasn't to blame. The day not half over, and 10,000 slain, and now there's nobody remembers our names. And that's how it is for a soldier.
God, that was a lot more dark and solemn than I was anticipating going into it. I almost like don't know what to say. I came into it thinking like, man, this picture's really cool. Obviously, it's First World War themed. Uh, I don't know. That was not what I was expecting. Referencing, fighting the Hun, going after the Germans, and there's a lot of these. Even in World War One, on all sides, you see this, but things like the massacre of the innocents, where you have basically very undertrained or non-trained kids kids that signed up, were thrown into the fight way before they should have been, and they are just picked to pieces by the units on the other side. I've talked about this before. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they did it. And I know that Russia ends up falling. Obviously, they throw out the Tsar, and there's like total revolt there. You have that some in France too, where Pétain has to come in and kind of patch things over to try to get everything, to get the military back under control. But you would think with the conditions they had in the trenches, with the length of the war, with the lack of any real movement or give on, any side in any place, um, it just seems like nothing changes and it never ends. And it's kind of surprising that they did it, and that then they, once the war was over, they were just sort of expected to come back and go back to normal civilian life. After everything they had done and seen and lived through, they were just kind of shuffled back into mainstream society to continue to live. I don't know. I feel like the impact that the war had on the countries involved is so dramatic and so drastic and spreads to so many different things that it would be impossible to quantify everything it touched and for how long it was there. My guess is it's still there. My guess is there are still lots of things that societies do or changed or whatever, that were specifically because of the horrors of the war, and the men that were coming back into that world. How could it not? How could it not just change everything? This is one of the reasons why I absolutely just go nuts about the handling of the bonus army in the U.S. The World War II vets who basically marched during the Great Depression in Washington, D.C., in order to get their bonuses early, bonuses that had been promised to them. They wanted them early, because it was a depression and nobody could find any work or do anything. And the treatment of them, it was just terrible. It was terrible. They were basically treated as if they were like some, not quite like an enemy force, but very close, very close. A lot of people think it ruined Hoover's political career, but somehow you have some pretty well known World War II military leaders that were very much involved in putting that down. So, yeah, great song, rough topic and lyrics and all that, but I'm going to switch over now to the Sabaton one and we'll jump into that. Okay, here we go, the Sabaton one. Man, now that I know what to expect, I'm like, it's just rough. And Sabaton already does a good job at kind of like pulling emotion out of the threads in these songs. So, well, let's see. Let's jump into it. Imagine you're the one standing there talking. You're like, holy shit, that's Sabaton.
16 years old when I went to the war to fight for a land fit for heroes. God on my side and a gun in my hand, chasing my days down to zero. And I marched and I fought and I bled and I died, and I never did get any older. But I knew at the time that a year in the line was a long enough life for a soldier. Shoulder to shoulder, our thirst for the run, we were food for the gun, and that's what you are when you're soldiers.
I knew they were going to find a way to get a guitar solo into it somewhere. Man, for such a deep and solemn topic, for some reason the guitar solo starting made me feel way better. God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this. Yeah, it was a huge, God, it was a huge deal. They did it on purpose. It was like a recruiting strategy for the British. The whole thing was like, come down with your friends, your neighbors, your community, sign up and enlist, and you can actually serve with them side by side. You'll actually be serving with your friends and families. Unfortunately, the other side of that is when a group like at the Somme gets wiped out, and there's 100 other examples, but when a battle goes poorly, which almost all of the offensives went poorly for almost the entirety of the war. But when one does, you basically wipe out an entire area. Like it's not spread out amongst the country. It's very heavily centered because all these people signed up together and were serving together, and it can just, it just devastates some of these like local communities. Yeah, God, that's so rough. Um, I guess I'll stop it here with all the credits running now. But yeah, rough subject, rough song, beautifully done. I feel like it was a really great tribute. I actually have, normally it's up here on my table, but my son got a hold of it the other day. But I actually have one of the little poppy flowers that was it's like a replica of the ones that were sold in Britain, um, post World War One. Yeah, the World War One is, it's one of the most interesting wars. To me, it is the most interesting war to study, just because of everything that's going on and all of the things that go into it. But the reality of the situation was, a lot of the powers, a lot of the powers sort of wanted a war. And I feel like historians now have kind of come to the conclusion that war was coming to Europe. A general European war was coming. If it wasn't Gavrilo Princip, killing Archduke Franz Ferdinand, it would have been something else. But it was going to come. And the reality of modern war of their time was a couple of things. One, things like the machine gun and the way that the big guns had been, totally transformed. And you have things like the lighter than air aircraft and then biplanes, and it's just a huge technological shift forward, but it makes it to where nobody really knows how to fight a war like this. So they get a ton of men and really a lot of boys, and throw them out there and try stuff, and just see what works and what doesn't. I've said this a million times, especially British contemporaries, but of all sides. You can find it in all sides, but there are writers from the time. Some of them are journalists, some of them are veterans, some of them are, politicians. Contemporary writers of the time, a lot of them have this immense vitriolic like hatred for the military hierarchy of World War One, of their side, not of the enemy, of their side. And it's because they feel like they were far too cavalier with human life. They were far too callous with the way they handled it. It's hard for me to pick a side on that because I do feel like there was a lot of callousness on all sides. But I'm also not sure, like, this is a war that hasn't been fought before. And so nobody really knows what to do. And how can you figure out how to win if you don't try stuff? They are super slow to learn some of their lessons. God, are they slow to learn some of those lessons? And that unwillingness to learn quickly, unfortunately, leads to the loss of hundreds of thousands of lives. Some of the stories, specifically the line about the friend calling for his mom, that almost got me. I've read stories of people that are, they're in the trench and they can hear people out in no man's land who have been shot screaming for their mother. It's such a, God, it's brutal. All right, well, this was I'm gonna have to do something to lighten the mood after this, but this was a great video, a great tribute. I love the song. I can't believe I've never heard it before, and I feel like Sabaton did what they always do. That this is their lane. They don't miss. All of their stuff is great. This is basically what I expected from them. Man, super emotional song. Really liked it. Before you go, if you like the channel and want to support what we're doing over here, you can like, comment, subscribe. You could join the Discord. I'll put the link in the description box down below. If you have any comments, questions, other videos, anything like that, you can comment them down below or you can put them over in the Discord. I try to read all of the comments. I answer as many as I can. So if you see something, if I see something on there, I will do my best to answer it. And if you put a comment, I'm reading it. Every now and then there will be one or two that gets past me, but the vast majority of the comments I read. So if you have anything that you want to get across, just say it, and I will see you all next time.